Technological warfare belongs to the domain of testing as well, and does much to support the thesis that there is a little difference between testing and the real thing. To the extent that testing counts as warfare today, in today's paper, Korea is testing, and this requires some hermeneutic intervention. Is Korea's testing nuclear weaponry the real thing or a test? How to read a test, and so on and so forth. Politically, what are the implications? To the extent so that testing counts as warfare today, it marks the steady elimination of boundaries between weapons testing and their deployment. The test already functions as a signal to the enemy other. What this means, among other things, is that the Cold War was a war. It also means that W could at once invoke and scramble these codes by announcing on the eve of 9/11 that the attack on the World Trade Center was, in his words, a test. So the president came out on the evening of 9/11 and said, our nation is being tested. So how does his language at that moment of crisis, how does his language usage work here? Appearing to introduce a new rhetoric of justification for imminent military action, the president in fact reverted to a citation of pre-technological syntagms that captured the oratic pull of the test. In this context, the term sparkles as an anointment. The president bears the mark of election by virtue of the test. If a few months earlier he was elected by dubious political means, he is now elected by divine mandate to meet the demands of a terrific test in order to create history, which he begins to do by reinscribing the Crusades. Saying that the terror attack was a test, President Bush leaves no room for the undecidability of Abraham, the contestability of Job, or the intricated martyrdom of Christ in the desert or on the cross. Disturbing the codified usage of the trial to which the test alludes, the utterance subverts the condition of being tested by offering that, at the moment of its mention, the test has been passed. The test will already have made sense and turned in the result. One would not have been chosen to withstand it, the logic goes, if one had not already passed the test of history and countersigned, in this case by God. So when Bush says we are being tested, he reverts to a biblical language and tradition, and his sense of the test therefore means in uttering that we are being tested, he's already passed the test. He's been elected, anointed, so that this nation has passed the test. Whereas the Nietzschean and other thinking of tests require an open relation to a kind of open infinity, or what I was calling undecidability. Reinscribing and repeating the wars of his father, this little Isaac Bush jumps at the chance to return to traumatic sites. Like Isaac, neutralized and silenced by the father's package deal with the sacred, this one wants to dig into the earth, signing a legacy to which he was and was not called. A lot of my work has to do with whether you know you're receiving a call, and what it means to be uncalled or not called, but still jump up and think you're the elected one. Part of the vision thing that we call testing, the first Gulf War was conducted primarily as a field test, but it also phantasmatically displayed the characteristics of a national AIDS test in which America scored HIV negative, owing to the bloodless and safe war. The Gulf War set out to prove the hypothesis that no technology will ever exist without being tested. But once it is tested, we are no longer simply talking about a test. Nothing will be invented, no matter how stealth, nuclear, or unthinkable, that will not be tested. That is, at some level of calibration, realized. Hence, in addition to related issues of deployment, testing is always written into treaties. The necessity of treaties, conventions, and regulative discourse in itself underscores, in the manner demonstrated by Kant and Benjamin in their critiques of violence, the extent to which testing, like war, has become naturalized and can be only provisionally suspended by treaties that try to ban them. So at this point in what I was preparing to discuss with you, I wanted to show how Nietzsche slides and migrates into America, and how America becomes the test site par excellence for Nietzsche, and why, and how America is a place he predicts where actors will one day rule. And there's some very Californian moments here. There's also, you have to remember that Nietzsche, when I say transvaluates, he has a machine that affirms and is destructive of the very utterances that he puts forth. So being an actor or a role player for Nietzsche is also something to celebrate, because if you can fictionalize and produce different masks and selves, you're already on the level of art and science to a certain degree. For Nietzsche, the role players, which is to say those who had to go with the flow and who do not drop anchor in a kind of essence of identity, they're the Jewish people. They've had to tuck and roll, move, go with the flow, change personalities and identity papers, and they're able to do this, and Nietzsche praises them for this. At the same time, one grows into one's mask in a way that privileges becoming and changing and producing, proliferating personalities and possibilities and trajectories, and there's no longer faith in kind of monumental architectural projects, because there's such a fast turnover of who you can be in your becoming. So there's no longer a kind of commitment to the future or plans that would be transgenerational. So who today, says Nietzsche, would plan for the future and truly be committed to the future of generations that we can't even imagine?